out. Just if everybody could give me a sound check and just check that we're live and all good and everything is fine before we start rambling. Or you know. So welcome. I'll just wait for a sound check to come in. But anyway, assuming I'm live, welcome to my channel. I haven't been here in a while. I'm glad to be back though for this one. 5x5. Thank you, lads. Okay, so yeah, it's been a while. My channel has laid dormant for ages, a year. So I'll give you the basic story for this stream tonight. Is I haven't been here in a while. I haven't really been doing much, even posting on Twitter, stuff like that. Phil has been doing a lot, especially probably in the last 5 months, like 2022. And I actually haven't talked to Phil in months. Just I got busy, been a little bit of a bad friend, you know. I might not have returned a missed call, whatever. Let's just call it like it is, yeah. But
he's brutal on the phone.
Yes, but on the upshot of that for you watching, I think perhaps, is that I also, by the way, I haven't watched much online stuff like nationalist kind of journalism content, stuff like that, including Phil's. I've seen a few thumbnails go by my screen, but something we might get onto in a while as well. Fatherhood, I had a baby, son, and all that, and maybe that affects the brain a little bit or something. You know, it kind of distracts the mind from other matters or whatever. But anyway, point being, I haven't spoken to Phil on the phone in months. I haven't seen really Phil's videos, but what I do know is in passing, scrolling the odd kind of in passing thumbnail or notification, I know Phil's been doing a lot and attracting a lot of sort of, I don't want to say controversy, but like, you know, I've seen it's not just your uploads. I'm seeing other people post your stuff. You've been in the zeitgeist a bit, you know. But so I thought this was a perfect opportunity to, instead of ringing Phil up and talking for 3 hours on the phone, catching up on the videos I haven't watched, or instead of watching Phil's videos, just spending an hour going back over them, I'd just not touch it, not go anywhere near it. And now, and that's true, I've no idea, right, of some of this stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. And I thought for basically anybody else who hasn't, because not everybody's going to have watched anyone's videos, so it's like there's no sort of inside knowledge we're both having that people can miss out on. I don't know any of it. So anyway, I don't know, late show moment, welcome to the show, I suppose you call it, and all that.
Yeah, thanks, Girl, for having me, and you know, especially in my house, you know.
Yeah, no bother.
If anyone doesn't notice, like, we're doing this live stream on Girl Channel at my place, so the last time we were here doing a stream, or it was an interview, and I was running for the general election there. But yeah, no, it's great to be invited on, and it's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, and you've been busy, and you have a newborn son.
Yeah.
And
I'm delighted.
We're gonna be snobs here. I'm after opening a bottle of wine for the occasion, and Garrod isn't quick to refuse it in a glass, you know.
No.
Keep the old whistle wet.
Yeah.
So Aldi's finest, guys, just in case anyone thinks we're going off spending big money on wine, but it's great to be here. So I mean, I don't know where to start on all of this, but it's been a really busy few months for me anyway.
Yeah.
And it's been, you know, great support from people. My channel has grown a lot. I've come across some crazy situations and individuals along the way. And I was just saying to somebody today, a friend of mine, is like that. I think with the channel and with going after people and asking them questions, and
someone's just saying camera's shaky.
Okay.
Sorry, no worries. Good, carry on.
Yeah, and so I've been lucky in the sense of going out and about there. I mean, I suppose for the last year and a bit, I've had an opportunity to be on the streets, and I'm coming across situations, and I have been very lucky with them. But again, it's all about, I suppose, telling other people can do this as well. I mean, when you see something going on anywhere in the country, whip out the old camera and record the absurdity. Like, you know, if there's a politician out there, or even a doctor, a lawyer, anybody in society that's propping up this madness, you know, go after them with a phone. But I mean, in my situation, I've been doing it. I've been lucky. I've lost this fear or worry about, you know, approaching these people. They need to be approached. They need to be questioned for what they're doing. I just, you know, we all on our side, everybody watching this will say that it's criminal behaviour that's been foisted upon us, like on society, and we can't just keep going along with it, you know.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to that. Even to start with, because one, you have a different disposition to some people, right? I know you're not saying everybody should do it, but you have got some. You've either got an extra part or a part missing, because yeah, probably
more to do part missing.
But
maybe, yeah.
but it's because most people just can't handle it. It might be a generational thing as well. Millennials and Zoomers, people my age and younger, sort of, a lot of them, including myself, are like half afraid to pick up a phone or do even go in and send a letter or stuff like that. People are very socially retarded, basically, in certain sorts of ways. So the idea of confronting some big shot politician in their face and just not like standing up to it, most people, their voice would start to shake, they'd panic, they would show. Yours doesn't. You seem to enjoy it. Here's one for you. The other night, this like a little inside one. Was it last night I was on the phone to you?
Yeah.
So I was on the phone to Phil last night, and Phil, I'm sure you don't mind me, there's no secret thing here, but Phil was by the doll, and I just thought this was
Department
hilarious.
of Finance.
Department of Finance, the government place, and but you were on the phone. Phil was on, so talk to people here. Phil was on the phone to me, and we're chatting away, basically arranging tonight. I was like, let's not talk about issues. Let's just arrange the thing, and we'll talk about it on camera with everybody else. But as I'm speaking to Phil, someone walks by you, and you go, some politician or something like that.
They're standing at the steps.
Yeah, they're standing there. And I'm just on the phone to me, and he goes, all right, lads, how's the corruption going? How's the corruption going? Starts haranguing the lads, as you see on the videos all the time. But the thing I found funny about that was that, obviously, I assume you were on the phone to me, there was no video going, yeah?
No.
So it's like, Phil is so, like, real, that there doesn't need, it's not some sort of camera op. I mean, obviously, you record it and share it and stuff, but you just enjoy it. like most people would think, oh, he's doing it for, well, you know, some people could say he's doing it for the video content. So he's going there, he's going to that point with people in order to capture a moment and share whatever. Yeah, true. Sorry, I'm shaking the table. But no, you just enjoy doing it. Like if there's no video going, you just do it anyway. Like that's rare to start with. And then of course there's people are in debt. Something I want, loads we could talk about, but there's people are like 20-30 grand in debt for the car, the mortgage as well, the holiday, the next year's holiday, last year's holiday, all debt. Everything they pay is, they're 10 years behind, they're 800 years behind in terms of their actual money. And like, so even if you're on neutral, like you have your wage and you have no debt, but you just have to, every month you have to pay your next month. There was a time when that would have been considered precarious. Our grandfathers or whatever, right? They would have said, that's dangerous. You're right on the edge there. Whereas people now are 100 times worse than that. Being on net zero every month would be considered a luxury for a lot of people. A lot of people are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands in debt, and maybe 50, 60, 70, 80 grand in debt, excluding even the mortgage. I mean, and then so everything has to be paid. All the bills, everything has to be paid
on top of that.
So you can't be cut off. Like if you get cut off from your job, you're absolutely finished. There's no time. There's like you're gone. So that's an aspect as well. I think why people are less brave or whatever. But just to lead into one of your things. So I said I hadn't watched any of your stuff recently, but there's one I cheated last night and watched one of them because it was the one you uploaded, the INTO.
Yeah.
And you can talk about that in a sec because that's obviously one of the big topics for tonight. But a thing that struck me, it was the usual kind of you're getting up in someone's face, asking them difficult questions, and they're squirming. And it got me thinking, if someone didn't know about the politics of it, they're sort of not plugged in, but they saw your video, there's a language to that kind of interaction that you don't need to know what the subject matter is to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So you're completely clued out. You don't know anything about trans politics or this or that, left, right, but you're watching it and you know what it looks like when, let's say, an animal rights activist approaches some cruel company who are abusing the animals, torturing animals, but they're afraid about their reputation, and you're asking them to explain X and Y thing, and they just can't explain it because they know you're right, but they can't converse either, and so they end up doing that thing where they walk away and they say, you'll have to arrange a meeting and stuff. Everyone in the world recognizes that phenomenon. So whether it's animal rights, whether it's nationalism, left, right, or whatever. People know what it looks like when an institutional figure, like your one, is squirming. They know what that squirm looks like. We all know, even when you're 5 years old, watching the telly, you'd see a clip like that where someone's getting harangued and you go, oh, fuck, oh, it's very awkward for them now, they're really on the spot. And why are they on the spot? Why can't they just say, I'll talk to you? Because if you're telling the truth, you can just say, I'll talk to you. So people recognize that's the right. So the power of that is amazing to start with, because it's so easily understandable. Like, people get it straight away what you're doing. And the other thing as well, to kiss arse a bit here, is that in the Western world, in the nationalist sort of dissident scene, there are some epic journalists, very good journalists out there, but I don't think there's anyone, because I could say, oh, you're the best in Ireland at that sort of journalism. I don't know anyone in America, Britain, Australia, etc., who's doing, not that I'm aware of, who's doing that. There's your man Avi, the Israeli.
Avi Yemeni,
yeah, a guy like that. He does some of that, some rebel media.
Yeah.
But
be careful now there from a certain.
I understand. Yeah, there's
section here.
That's a bit of a.
You don't want to be, part of an Israelite,
Yeah, so that's the thing.
And Israeli.
And the thing is that rebel are funded. Along that, they're sort of establishment. They are accepted because they have those sort of connections. So you're actually, they don't really even count. They model themselves as independent, but they're not really. You obviously couldn't be more independent if you tried. You're just a guy with a selfie stick. So, INTO, what happened there?
Yeah, great question. But it happened yesterday, and I have to say, I have very, very good people around me, giving me, bits and pieces of information that keeping me informed, keeping me posted. And I got a phone call yesterday. She knows who she is. She's watching now, please God. A wonderful person, a woman, and she has been helping me with research and looking into and giving me all the right names of people who are responsible for pushing these agendas in all these different organizations, starting from the UN and working your way down, and then you arrive to a place like the INTO. Like, the INTO are probably one of the most influential organizations on our children in Ireland, right? Because
what does INTO stand for?
The Irish National Teachers Organisation.
Right.
I happen to know personally the General Secretary from years back, who I would have always thought to be a great guy, lovely guy to meet socially and everything else. Donegal man. He was a principal in Whitechurch School in Farnham, then he was a principal in St. Colmcille's in Knockline, and now he's the General Secretary of the INTO, the Irish National Teachers Organisation, which came to our attention probably last year when they put out this cartoon. And the cartoon is it's been created we're in the process, this is an ongoing, let's say, story that we're going to go after it, and I won't stop until I get John Boyle on camera to talk to me. That's it. I mean, he has to come in and explain what he's done and what his policies are, what the agenda is for the INTO, but they've been doing this for so long, and I've been trying to contact them. I've emailed them and gone through all their hoops, jumped through their hoops, no reply. So it's unfortunate, as you mentioned, that woman, getting into her face. I didn't really have to get into her face. She was quite nice to me when I said hello to her, and I took the camera out and I started filming. She's well trained. I can say groomed for this. Dealing with possible media people or whatever. This isn't appropriate, and it was kind of very interesting. I didn't say it in the video last night, but it's interesting how she spent a good bit of energy trying to make me out to be the bad person and the inappropriate person for not going through the channels and not making. I would gladly talk to you. And now, when you hear the subject matter and you look into it, you won't talk to me. And I would love you to, if you're listening to this now, Maureen, ní clerica, but I would love you to talk to me, and I won't bite. I'm just there to. You need to answer questions of about a serious issue, that what you're doing to the minds of children, young impressionable children in this country, is an absolute disgrace. So she tried to make it out of me it being inappropriate. Again, deflecting from it, just usual psychological tact. Maybe, I don't know, and I think what I try to do as well, I've been listening to the likes of yourself, and I started off listening to people like Keith Woods, and you listen to Dave Cullen, who I regard as the superheroes of bringing the truth out, putting the story out there. alternative to the lies that we're hearing on the mainstream media.
Yeah.
And the hyper intellectuals. I'm just an ordinary git, right? And
I see you're playing the Columbo there. That's all you're doing there.
well,
really.
I'll tell you now.
Okay.
I mean, I'd sit there like, and when Keith Wood starts to talk, I mean, half the stuff comes out of his mouth I don't understand. But maybe I'm trying to be a bridge here between what's going on with you guys, and the kind of philosophical, sophisticated, well-educated guys. I went to the University of Life basically. Like I just learned my stuff from life experience. But maybe I'm trying to keep it simple for people, for the ordinary punter to just have a look at this and not to overcomplicate it. Maybe I'm good at it, I don't know. I like to think people might think I am, but so in other words, when I put up that video, I just wanted to say, look, just stick to the basic facts. And they are, what it is grooming of children. That's what it is, this transgender stuff.
So here's the thing. You were, let's say, confronting that lady. There was no, you're right, you weren't in her face, there's no harassing her, but she might try to implicate that a little bit. They always do.
Absolutely.
But like, you were being, the videos there, you're being perfectly polite and all that. And of course, she asked you to go through proper channels and you're saying, I will and I am, but that's not working. Yeah, and you did. But what was the subject matter of, were you specifically approaching her and your trade, this John Doyle, is it?
John Boyle.
John Boyle, sorry.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to approach, is it on the general matter, or are you zooming in on the cartoon specifically, let's say?
The cartoon specifically, I asked her about, but I mean, at the end of the day, we have to find out what the IMTO are doing in relation to this LGBTQ plus whatever agenda.
Yeah.
Infinitum, but it's like, this is very serious. I mean, to me, there is no doubt in my mind. I mean, if you look at this girl, Anne-Marie Mina, she is an out-and-out LGBT whatever activist, right? She's in the video trying to explain to people that kids change, they realise that they can become homosexual by the age of 12, and then they can realise that they're transgender much younger.
Who's this lady?
Her lady's Anne-Marie Mina. She's a school teacher, God help us. Right, and she's in that video, and it's there. You can see it. I put it up last night. I took a clip from the cartoon. It's an intro where this is what she's trying to tell people, and this is what the INTO and the likes of John Boyle, I'd see him at football matches and hurling matches and things like that. That's where I'd meet him, and he's an Irish Gael, like an Irish man, and he's addressed himself there down in Wexford at their AGM in 2019. They had a woman there as well from a crowd called Educate and Celebrate from the UK, and a patron of that is our old friend Peter Tatchell, right? He's one of the 5 patrons of that organisation. So Ellie Barnes comes to Wexford as a guest from this organisation, and she tells the people at the conference, the teachers' conference, not to tell the parents that you're bringing in this RSE, this radical sex education we call it, into the schools. Don't tell them about it. You don't want screaming parents coming at your door. This kind of underhanded stuff. And they're all laughing and joking about it. And then Mr. Boyle, John Boyle, the General Secretary, comes up to make his address, and he calls himself he, him, in Irish and English, right? So in other words, John Boyle, are you trying to tell me that you're going to tell, well, you already are, you've shown it now since the cartoon, but you're telling the children of Ireland that your teachers are responsible, you're telling your teachers to tell the kids that there's 600 different genders or 500 or whatever there is, this utter and anti-science nonsense. So yeah, I mean, the video itself, like, I mean, I got the word in the morning that this woman, she's actually going to a conference there in the Ashcan Hotel, and I went, oh really? She's one of the assistant general secretaries. Now, whoever it was, as long as she's an assistant general secretary or the general secretary, to me that's fair game. They're there to be asked questions.
Absolutely.
They're on a huge salary. Yeah. And they're doing this to children, and don't give me. And the other thing as well, which is, it's always the common thing, when they're leaving and everything else. It could have been, I don't know who it was. Could have been her son, friend. I don't know. He threw his arm around her. It was like she playing the victim, right? And then afterwards, we walked down the road. My car was down the road where she had gone, so I had to go past her again. And she was on the phone, and she looked distressed or whatever. Like, oh my God, somebody's come up to me and asked me questions, and this has caused her distress, her 100,000 a year, so I don't feel bad about it. I know that this has to be done. These people, like, I was talking to Bosco from Saints and Scholars this morning. He's a great friend of mine, and we were just talking about this, and yeah, I mean, it's something that has to be done. Like, there's nobody. There was a guy there from RTE actually. Let's see what we're talking about. We all remember the older people. Brendan O'Brien was a journalist for RTE, and he used to be sent out to doorstep people. He went and he doorstepped the general one time, walking out of a social well. I used to follow him, and he was fearless, like, and that's the way it should be done. Like, I mean, the general was one of the worst criminals Ireland ever had. Like, he was a violent murderer, robber, whatever. Got shot dead in Ranelagh in his car years ago. For anyone who doesn't remember that, there's a film about him, and so this Brendan O'Brien fella. So I don't know when that stopped in RTE, like, you know, the Brendans, the mainstream journalists that used to do it, it suddenly did come to a halt. But it's like, and I mean, that's what it has to be done, and it's ridiculous that I have to go and do that. I have to go. I have no choice, and find out where these people are, and go out and put a camera in their face. It's not the solution I want to do. I mean, I don't even want to be here at all. I'd rather be out socialising, playing golf or whatever, socialising with mates instead of having to do this. But it has to be done as far as I'm concerned. That's just the feeling that I have on it. But I mean, again, the INTO, they've been infiltrated heavily by this crowd. And there's a guy in there called David Geary. He's supposed to be head of communications. And by the way, before anyone starts to feel sorry about that for that woman last night, if they have any, apparently now we've been looking at it, that she is responsible for pushing all of this stuff out into the schools, into the teachers, you know, celebrating pride and all that in a primary school. Like, what the hell? We all went to school. None of us had any notion or idea of what sexual preference of your teacher was. It was never a thing. You know, none of our schoolmates, you know, there was never any of these suicides, and you know, you had a sissy and you had a tomboy, and they used to just get on with it. They got maybe bullied a bit, like the same way as a fellow with red hair and freckles got bullied. You know, we all got a bit of bullying. I got bullied and whatever for wearing glasses when I got them. Everybody had a bit of bullying in school, but there was no kids from when I started in school when I left that I can remember a suicide among my generation of school. I don't remember one. I'm not saying that kids, you know, unfortunately there is the odd suicide, but they're so rare. But is that rare now? And what has it got to do with? Has it got to do with the internet? Has it got to do with all the messaging that's on the television about every ad you see? You know, there's a transgender, there's a homosexual couple or whatever.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the reason why that is happening is because we're living in a completely destroyed, broken society overall. As in, we could go on all day. There's a million different reasons for that. I mean, we could, but with the ad itself, right? And just to comment on this John Boyle and the lady who were speaking in the video. The interesting thing, if you go and watch these videos on Phil's channel, Phil Dwyer on Telegram, right, and on YouTube, is that they're not, most of them in these INTOs and that, they're not blue-haired, bull ring wearing lunatic sort of ideologues or whatever. Most of them are just, if you met them in Super Value, and if you were on the local GAA board with them or whatever, you think a normal guy or whatever, and basically they're actually not ideologues, which is actually, I think, lower and more despicable, because they're basically not ideologues. It's just that they're just taking their 100 grand salary a year and thinking, I'm all right, Jack, this is brilliant for me, and I don't care less about it. I'll destroy the country, destroy people, individuals, destroy children, just for the few bob. And I suppose if no one's criticizing me for it and everybody institutionally gives me a big pat on the back, then I suppose I'm not even doing anything wrong. And that's where you come in and you pierce that bubble and you go, well, hold on a sec now, right? Actually, what if someone gets in your face? What if everybody knows your name, your face, right? And, you know, it's not a threatening thing, it's just reality. These are public figures, paid public money. And the other thing is then, like, I'll just make sure the battery is good here. Sorry to put my hand over you, lads, but better than the whole thing shutting down. Other thing as well, lads, if you could share this, if you haven't considered doing it already, no harm. We're, you know, not doing it. We're not getting anything out of it, but the only thing we get out of it is people seeing it and stuff like that. So, at least you could do if you don't mind. But anyway,
just on that point,
go ahead.
It's like it is. I mean, as you say, they're not ideologues or whatever. Like, I have a feeling either the likes of John Boyle and the people you say you know, they're there to collect a 100 grand salary, and John Boyle is on more than that now, I can tell you. But they will just literally go along and do anything that they're asked to do, regardless of the consequences. They probably feel, but sure, the majority of the people, you know, are on board with all of this LGBT, gay pride stuff and everything else. And so, you know, we push it along. It's our conscience. I have a feeling that woman's conscience was got to maybe yesterday.
I could see it. It was there.
I think
It was
could
there.
have been.
Yeah.
I'd like to think it could have been. And as I said to you, if you're listening, Maureen, I'm open to sit down with, you know, and if you could be, and if you could talk and be open and honest, and maybe, who knows, somebody might decide I've enough of this. But what has to happen, as far as I'm concerned, with these people, like if they had any morals, they should resign. Like John Boyle.
Absolutely.
And I know there's a group of teachers, I forget the name now, Rossa the Barra is involved with, and Teachers Alliance, I think it's called. But they're calling for their resignation, the whole executive, like the assistant secretaries and all that. I think there's 5 of them. So, like, the moral thing about this is just, it's beyond debate. I mean, anybody who sits down in front of a child and tells them that you can become another gender at that age, and whatever, at any age anyway, it's impossible, and it's disgraceful.
Let's face it, this is the truth as well. It's not just, and this would be bad enough, but it's not just that they're sitting down and saying, you know, this is a possibility, it's something that is not necessarily wrong, you could come forward and talk. No, I don't condone that, but that would be one position. But they're glamorizing it. I mean, clearly, if you have, Mary can be Johnny, and they're very special and all this kind of stuff, that's promoting a thing. It's not just putting a thing out there as a neutral factor, whatever. They're glamorizing and promoting it to children, and ultimately, like, you know, the content of the video as well is it's these little cartoon kids, and it's like Johnny can be Mary and Mary can be Johnny, and this something like that.
But it's attractive.
And when you see it, you will have a visceral. Just go to Phil's channel maybe after this and have a look at it. You'll get a visceral gut anger, like a you'll kind of see red, like, when you see this thing. And anybody evil, absolutely, yes.
Satanic evil.
Satanic, predatory, I would say there's a sort of a child predator sort of, let's say, vibe off it, to put it that kind of way. Because why the interest? What's the big interest in children? Even with a lot of this LGBTQP plus propaganda and that, I notice a lot of it is kind of like funny, like they're wearing their drag stuff and it's little dresses and magic wands and unicorns and all this stuff, and it's the kind of thing that's become so pervasive that sometimes you have to stop and look at it and go, holy, I've been seeing this for years and that's only dawning on me now. It's always like it's something out of a child's TV show. Even the adult stuff, they're always acting like cartoon children. And you go, what is this weird? This is fucking strange. Excuse my language, right? But yeah, you know, because I've never but I'm just trying to be good, you know. But
you can curse away. It's my house. You can curse away if you want.
Yeah, fair enough. But the thing as well with the he/him thing and all that. Just a quick point, and then I'll move on from this subject because we've kind of said our piece about it. One of the things that the he/him thing and she/her and all that, in a lot of corporate and sort of higher end work, medium to high end work, plumbers aren't doing this, right? Let's say, even though plumbers are paid a lot, but you know what I mean. Middle class and upper class professional work. It's become standard for them to do the he/him thing or whatever, right? Or she/her, and I think it's a show of loyalty to the regime. If you're willing to say, it's like if you're a master, the person you're trying to suck up to get money off. If they say, tomorrow I want you to say that you're a peach, and you say, okay, I'm a peach, they go, well, I've got this person is an absolute clown for showing loyalty. Like, they will do anything, and at that point, you're not going to rock the boat, because if you're willing to say stupid stuff like that, crazy things like that, just because it's got status attached to it, then you're willing to do anything for status and money. And the other thing then is that parents, and you know this, but like, all of this is coming through the schools right now, through these INTOs, all these gone-beans who don't really believe in it, but they're doing it anyway. So if the head of the INTO doesn't believe it, he could say that's, because
imagine so,
let's say that's my speculative opinion. I suspect that he doesn't believe it. He could say, oh, well, you can't read my mind. I can't, so as a matter of fact, I don't know for sure. That's my feeling, probably as yours too. I'm going to say he doesn't really believe it, and if the other lady doesn't believe it, and they're like the bosses of these big organizations, and whoever the Minister for Education is, Norma or something, she's just another country gone bean making her few bob. If she doesn't believe it either, you go, well, where's it all coming from then? Who does believe it? And then you go to the teachers and the parents in the schools, parents of all the children in Ireland, the primary custodians of all these kids, they don't want it. Like, you might find 1 in 50,000 or something like that who wants it. The other 49,999, not only do they not want it, but they desperately don't want it. So you go, well, if that's the case, then what's even going on? And that's probably a question for another day. But that's your he-him thing, it's loyalty. And then, so you come back to that, it's a loyalty show, the he-him thing. You must now have it in a professional environment. And then nobody wants it. Then you go, well, why don't parents push back then? If the institutions are taken, why don't the parents themselves say that? Well, if the same parent or the same kid who really doesn't want it, but they also are kind of half forced at work to say he, him in his email, well, how's he going to go to work in Google or Pfizer or whatever it is in his job when him and all his colleagues are expected to say he, him, and they're like, God, was that you on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter the other night who were saying you don't want the trans thing? And then everybody's in debt and all of this, so they don't. So it's almost like they're trapped at work. Like it's a full assault. They're getting the kids in the school, and they have the parents. Work for parents is basically school for parents, right? The parents in their own school, they're not allowed to talk about it either. So they've got this broad, multi-generational, full spectrum assault on people in Ireland, and everybody down to a man. You go to talk to the most normal people ever at work, at this and that. I mean, if you talk about immigration, maybe some people differ or whatever. You start talking about the trans thing, kids, schools, all that. To a man, they're like, they'll say openly in private, they'll say, oh, that's nonsense, that's crazy, that's demonic or whatever, and they can't do it. My only point is just those few bits.
Publicly, they won't.
Yeah. So they've got people by the balls. It's basically a totalitarian ideology.
But look at the way the Catholic Church was back in the day. I mean, like I'm whatever so many years older than you. So, but when we were going to school, there was a pervert priest in our school. He's dead now, and he has been brought up on charges. Or he was being brought up in charges and we all kind of knew. The underlying feeling was everybody knew this guy was doing something bad, and the teachers knew. I have no doubt that the teachers knew. Nobody would speak up about it, and nobody can say a bad word about an LGBTQ plus person. I had a friend of mine. She broached me on Facebook because I put up a thing about the flags of South Dublin County Council. They're pushing out those transgender flags now next week. They had the flag up, by the way, an Irish flag up there last week, a week and a half ago, for the first time ever. I'm living here 3.5 years. First time I ever saw one up there. And lo and behold, they took it down after a couple of days, maybe 2 or 3 days again. Whether, I don't know why or whatever, but anyway, there's another thing I'm looking at. Those places have been overrun, the libraries have been overrun, infiltrated with LGBTQ plus stuff. And you cannot criticise them. The same way as you could never criticise anything bad about a priest
or a bishop or a cardinal. Look at Roderick O'Gorman. There was a reasonable critique of Roderick O'Gorman. If you don't know it, look it up. Roderick O'Gorman, Peter Tatchell,
Minister for Children,
something like that. Search Google and you'll find it straight away. Minister for Children associating with paedophile apologists, right? And instead of the media, not only they were silent for about a week or two, and then when we got nearly 1,000 people outside the government buildings. They actually went into full-scale defence. They've moved on from silence to full-scale active defence. Roderick O'Gorman, victim of attack, victim, full spectrum across the newspapers, copy and pasting the headlines. He's getting to go on radios and talk about how he's under attack and all this, blah, blah, blah. Instead of people just saying, listen, Roderick, you're the Minister for Children here. I mean, let's just start there. How did that happen to start with? LGBT activist, sort of progressive, urban, cosmopolitan gay guy. Let's face it, realistically, I would want the Minister for Education to be a country woman with 10 kids and who has deep roots in her community and has lots of kids. They've raised them in a healthy fashion and all of that. It's probably what you'd want. A woman like Mary Poppins, basically, is what you want to see a Minister for Education, in effect, right? Not,
well, a Minister for Children that actually has experience in raising kids, possibly as well, might be a benefit. Like this guy will never, and it's like orchestrated. Roderick O'Gorman, Catherine Saponi was another gay Minister for Children who has no children. And this guy is planted in again, and it's all about this agenda. And I was watching that creepy video. Everyone probably seen it from San Francisco, gay men's choir, singing that we're coming. The gay agenda is coming for your children,
Yeah.
And then there was so much outrage over it, it was whipped down very quickly. But like this is how, I hate the phrase cocky, but this is how, you know, cocky they are about going after. They are going after the children. They want to get the children, and that's why I keep going on about this issue. Maybe more than some people might like, but I'm going on about it is because they are doing this so they will get them from that early age, and they will make them into little social justice warriors, totally transfixed about inclusivity, equality, and all of this. And it's over then. Like that, they'll do anything they're told. They'll wear any mask they want. They'll just give up their freedoms, give up their rights. They want to have a clue about what freedom actually even means.
Yeah, it's like anti-nature, you know.
And it's an agenda. Like it's an agenda that's going on, and it has to be fought back against. It is the end of it if we don't. You know?
Well, okay, and the LGBTQ plus lobby will go on about the agenda thing. What they do is when they do stuff like that, it's an outrageous sort of they think it's a rebellious thing to say. They think they're being ironic to say conservative people who are concerned about this are ridiculous and we're taking the piss out of it by being ironic, right? They're not saying, from their point of view, they go, no, we're not really saying we're coming after your kids, we're taking the piss out of how paranoid you conservatives are. But it's like, that would be funny if it were true, but you are, so it's not funny. It's just you telling the truth. It crosses over from irony into like post-meta irony, and they're just straight up telling the truth. It's kind of funny. But and then, you know, if we took a vote of Irish parents, how many people want trans inclusive education coming into primary schools? You'll get a 99.9% no. And then if the education comes through anyway, regardless of any opposition, is there another word for that besides agenda?
Yeah.
A hidden institutional agenda. So they can act like it's a crazy moral panic all they want. It's just facts, and the parents know this.
And they know the parents' opinion doesn't matter in this. They're not considered at all. They're just a nuisance. They're in the way.
Yeah, and they look at it and they say, well, it's not even your kid anyway. It's our kid.
It's our kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the real evil of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go on. Yeah.
So I wanted to. I'm looking at my notes because I was taking some notes. You know, I kind of want to get on to the most recent thing I have here is Portarlington.
Yeah.
So I know there's something going on in Portarlington.
Yeah.
That's full stop. My knowledge.
Okay. Well, look, you were one of the main people in Utrecht, and when this direct provision system, you know, started to become a thing in Ireland, where we were becoming aware of how demographically it's affected the population of the country, and then when you look at the lack of vetting and everything else that's coming in, and then the crime levels, the disproportionate crime levels. Anyway, Portarlington, somebody got in touch. I seen a Facebook video. A wonderful woman, Kathleen. What's her second name again? Kathleen Brown, was it? And she did a kind of little video outside this hotel.
Is she a local?
She's a local. 22 years there, right? So, so they put this East End Hotel in Portarlington. They put a group of. All I ever saw when I was down there was Middle Eastern military age males. Right? There was no women or children in it. Now, allegedly, one of them was supposed to have chased a 14-year-old girl from outside the hotel down to a garage, and making lewd comments to her and everything else, scared the living daylights out of her. And I think there was one or two more alleged incidents where they were filming kids going to school and things like that. Concerned, worried parents and people. A great guy down there called Jay. He's a local. His kids are going to school down there, and he started that protest. It was on the Thursday. So when I saw that, I honestly did get angry. Like, and I said, like, what's going on here? This is happening now in front of our eyes. This is real time. It's a place where now we can go to and confront these people, ask questions to the owners, what's going on with the guards, and now we're going down there again on Saturday morning at 12 o'clock, 12 noon I should say, and then you know, ask your local politicians, why is this happening? Who are these people coming in? They're not vetted. The guy who we suspect sexually harassed this girl, is from Georgia, right? There is no war in Georgia. And the bog standard excuse for coming over from Georgia these days is they're afraid that they're running away from the Russian mafia, right? Total bullshit, nonsense, right? And we're taking these people in, and it's a direct agenda, again, a population replacement agenda. Bring as many as possible, fill the whole place full of them. the politicians know it's probably going to turn into a voting base for them as well. It's about cheap labour. They do not care about the victims of all these policies, the consequences. For, like, we have the Ashling Murphy, and it baffles me. It really baffles me, like, what the families of these victims that are afraid even to speak out about it, you know. And then the two guys in Sligo that were allegedly murdered by a radical Muslim, who's known around the place for being completely against homosexuality for his own religious reasons or whatever, and he is the alleged murderer. Beheading these two guys in one little town in Sligo.
But just a quick point on that. What's funny about that is that up until the point where they thought, oh, it's some sort of homophobic far right attack or whatever, they were like greyhounds in the trap, ready to rock, right? For a full spectrum sort of Savita Halappanavar, George Floyd, the lady who got murdered in England. They made a thing of her. Like this massive thing.
They seem to always have the apparatus in place.
But yeah, they were ready to roll because, of course, they probably trained for these things and drilled for it, basically.
Yeah.
And eventually, you know, whether it's faked or not, eventually by just the laws of probability, at some point one of them is going to line up. They will get their chance eventually. But the moment it turned out to be some sort of non-Irish or whatever, suddenly they just disappeared. It didn't matter. Two gay, apparently the gays are the most precious victims in the whole world. Anybody else who got beheaded is not as tragic. The real tragedy is if they're attacked for that reason, right? Allegedly. And yet when it's the wrong perpetrator and there's no agenda to push against Irish people, then like it just disappeared. Gone.
And especially with Ashling Murphy.
Her too.
The alleged murderer for that is not from Ireland, and that disappeared. And the apparatus was in place big time, ready to go, ready to roll. Misogynistic, you know, women hating stuff. You know,
women aren't safe. But then when it's a foreigner, they're like, whatever. Whatever.
He's traumatized, poor devil. Apparently with the Ashling Murphy, I'm hearing reports that they don't even know what to charge this guy with. You know. Like they're trying to maybe make a lesser charge of manslaughter or whatever, like, you know what I mean? It's disgusting.
With Mohammed Moray a few years ago in Dundalk when he killed Yosuke Sasaki, the Japanese guy. Again, that's still playing its way through insanity plea and all that. So again, these things are all swept under the carpet. But of course, if it was some sort of Irish white, God forbid, nationalist type of person or whatever, it would be like the O.J. Simpson trial. It would be going on and on and on and on. So it's just, even they don't care about victims. They don't care about. They really. It goes to show that all of their alleged claims about we want to help asylum seekers from other countries, even though they're not really asylum seekers. We want to help gay people. We want to help women. We want to help this, that, and the other. They don't care. They want to attack. They want to deconstruct Irish society. Effectively, that's all it is. And if a white Irish man gets attacked by a foreigner, then they don't care, right? And then if a foreigner gets attacked by a gay, they don't care. And if a gay gets attacked by a foreigner, they don't care. It has to be the right person to attack, or to deconstruct, which is Irish people, basically, and normal, straight, white Irish people, so to speak, right? And even, you know, I don't know.
The play on the emotions of the Irish people as well. It's all emotional blackmail, attacking your emotions to make you feel sympathy for anybody except an Irish person. That everybody coming in here is genuine. They're victims. They're fleeing war. They're fleeing oppression, whatever it might be. And it's all a play on our emotions. And it's like, what's very disappointing was like with Portarlington. First of all, we got a great crew. I made a kind of an impromptu plea there the night before in my card for people that I was going to go down and people to come down, and we got a great crowd, somewhere between 70 and 80 people, I think it was in the end, which was great to see. But there was so few from actually Portarlington
because they're afraid,
and they're afraid, and it's like, guys, you have to take your power back. You know, don't let these people have this emotional, psychological power over you. You need to defend your women and your children. It's that basic now. And as I said in the thing, we can talk for hours about the World Economic Forum and the Agenda 2030 and the UN, and that that are, and the World Health Organization, you know, that are, yeah, they're important issues as well. But this is a real time issue where women and children are in danger now from these. And I have a feeling with this hotel I get this feeling that these guys were all kicked out of other places, and they've all been just imported into that particular place. They're so cocky and arrogant, going in and out, looking and filming you laughing.
Yeah.
The guy that we suspect was the guy that chased the girl. He was upstairs at the window flicking his ashes of a cigarette out the window when we were at the door. Just this little sign like flicking to say, yeah, you don't bother me kind of thing. But it's the men now of Portarlington that need to step up. And like Jay is a good guy down there, and he's going around and he's keeping a close eye on them as best he can. But he's only one guy, and he needs help. He needs help from these men. Now is the time, like that, when that situation has been made known to you. Now is the time to just get up off your arse and start making your presence felt there. Watch out for your kids and your women walking down the street. And I've heard a report. I can't confirm it. Somebody sent me an email today that there's been another attack. Well, in the sense of an attempted sexual assault or whatever. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but we're going to go down there and we're going to ask questions about it. Maybe the girl in question might talk to me. I'd love to think that she might. You know, you have to report these things to the guards. Like even to the point where these girls are afraid to go to the Gardaí. You know, I'm not a fan of the guards myself, but I mean, at some point you need to report this. We can do nothing at all if they don't go to the guards, and then we can force the guards or impress on the guards to do their jobs. That's it, simple as that. But if it comes down to it, like, we don't want society to break down into a situation where you have no choice, and people will start to take the law into their own hands. You know, and that's not what I want. That's not what we want to happen.
Well,
that's
the
if
point of
your
it.
child is being attacked. And children are being attacked openly. Your government don't want to address that situation. They don't want to talk about it. It's not happening in their mind. You know. There's another individual there, Chico Makanda, this Angolan guy.
I was going to ask you.
Going around the streets.
Where is this?
I won't say too much on camera. Well, I have a fair idea, and it beggars belief where this guy, we think he's staying.
Okay.
We have reports.
I'll just in case you trip up on it, I'll skip past it. Who is he and what's the story with him?
He was locked up and he was released back in January, and he was given 2 weeks. He was locked up for two attempted rapes and vicious assaults on 2 different women in Dublin, and he's been locked up for indecent exposure on children, right? And I think he's had 15 previous convictions as well. Yeah, he's an Angolan national apparently, and part of his release was he got 2.5 years, 7.5 years sentence, 2.5 suspended, and part of the thing was that he was when he was released, he had to leave the country within 2 weeks, and he's still roaming around the place like at leisure, you know. And women out there are at an immediate risk from him as well. And you have your Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee. I missed her. She passed by me there about 2 weeks ago. I did the video with Timmy Dooley, and I was walking away, and I missed the opportunity with the camera. But I kind of shouted back, and she was running away from me literally. I said, "What about Chico Makanda? Have you know, what are you going to do about him?"
She doesn't really care about women. Let's face it.
She doesn't. I mean, that's the, like, to bring in all these unvetted migrants, males, military-age males. First of all, if they're from a war-torn country, why are they leaving their own women and children there behind them? You know, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just be sending your women and your children away into safety
temporarily?
So again, it's nothing to do with fleeing war. It's economic migrants. It's self-interested economic migrants. Laughing down, like, just take it. How can you expect anybody to come over to this country like that and expect them to respect you? They come in, like, if you brought someone into your house, and more stories are coming out about the Ukrainians now being brought into houses,
but we'll get on to that.
Abusing the hospitality. Well, they won't respect you because you don't respect yourself.
I'd be so embarrassed if I went to a country on false pretenses. It'd be one thing if I was real and I was like, just give me asylum for 6 months till I can go home and I'll be grateful and I'll pay for it or something like that. But these guys are like just staying in these hotels, getting their stuff brought to them, sitting around probably watching TV all day. It's like being in some sort of creche or something, how degrading is that? And then going around like leering at girls and stuff walking by, you know, just like idling basically, doing nothing.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty mortified. Like, I mean, talk about having no balls. Like, and then I suppose they take it out in ways by being, you know, obviously some of them there are just taking the opportunity. They're not all rapists, right? So just in case someone tries to mischaracterize it, but but in terms of bored, idle hands and a bunch of men cooped up together, you know, even in a prison or an army situation or something like that, it's known that that can lead to sort of assault and sexual abuse and stuff like that. Those are known to be dangerous positions, you know, where men kind of cooped up in these places start to get like criminal dispositions and stuff like that in that way. Like that's kind of if that's understood, that's known.
Yeah, but if they're not already criminally minded people.
Oh no, they have to. Yeah, they have to. Of course, like a prison or to some extent an army has sort of strange people often as well. Let's be honest.
There's a huge amount of them that are calling home and they get here and they're put up in a 4-star hotel, you know, with 3 meals a day handed to them, and luxury accommodation, and they're getting 200 quid a week, and they're getting a prospect of a house within 4 months.
Meanwhile, Johnny Murphy is going to work, waking up at 5:30 in the morning, traveling 2 hours to work for like what, €15 an hour or something, right? Working all day long, paying through the nose for petrol on the way back because his country's on a NATO crusade, right? For like whoever.
For a country we know nothing about the dispute that's gone on between Russia and you know.
And then they come back and their marriage probably is suffering, their family life is suffering. They don't own their house, they never will own their house. They have no free time, they have no sort of social structure to belong to. And they are basically absolutely cooked, immiserated, emasculated men paying for these other dopes to sit around watching telly and like rape their daughters.
Their only consolation then is Sky Sports and a few pints maybe.
Oh yeah, exactly. Oh come on, Manchester United. I'm if you said to them they're not tribal, they'd say, oh, I'm very tribal. I'm very tribal. When it comes to Manchester United fantasy football and what's the other one? They're into something, I forget what it is. Oh yeah, they love their thing, you know. But Marvel films, the latest, Superman or whatever. I mean, I was thinking about it recently. When did we get to the point where 40-year-old men? It was normal for 40-year-old men to like discuss superhero films as small talk. Like it used to be, you'd sit around and you'd talk about the economy or something like that. You know, now you sit around and you go, "Did you see the new Spider-Man?" Two 40-year-olds, like or whatever, sitting around going, "Oh yeah, God, I thought that was great. Yeah, the new Captain, NATO or whatever, right?" But yeah, so that brings us on to the Ukraine thing. You had a big sort of sensation a while ago with Paul Joseph Watson, what's the word? Signal boosted you, and it kind of went around the place. What happened there? Where were you, and how did you come across it?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, like saying to people like the great Emerald, she's there, and hopefully they'll watch it again. And it's like even yesterday with that woman from the INTO, somebody is helping me out. You know, somebody up there is watching it. Some guardian angel is there looking after me, I think. But we went to the airport. I was with one of the Men of Ireland lads, Brian. We went initially looking for some kind of a hall that they were supposed to be keeping refugees in Cabra somewhere. And there was a girl on Facebook the day before this, and she was talking about how she's been on the housing list for 22 years and she has no chance of. That's a fact now. There's no anyone on the housing list that have been skipped over by these what you call them, migrants.
It's official. They've said it. For years we were saying it. They were denying it as a conspiracy theory. Now they've said, "Oh, of course we are." Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So it was like we couldn't find these halls anyway. Hoping to find lots of these military age males coming in, and they were supposed to be Ukrainian refugees or whatever. And so Brian suggested that right, let's go and head to the airport and see can we find anything there. So we got to the airport, parked up the car, strolled over to where I knew the term, it's a very old terminal, one of the original terminals, but said right, we'll have a look in there. So of course saw them coming along with them. Now most of them there were women and children with their cases and everything else. But as we were kind of scrolling around there, we could see this little group of lads, men, definitely didn't look. And the whole thing about this was that Facebook post was that these people were coming out and they weren't genuine Ukrainian women and children fleeing a war, whatever.
Just by the way, a quick note on that. I appreciate your caveat to say, well, women and children. I'm gonna let's not fall out about it, right? But my thing is again, even in a war like Syria, Ukraine, whatever, Ukraine there's a lot going on in the east, there's conflict there. But if you study this war in any detail, you'll see that, well, if they really wanted to flee, let's say they happen to be in one of the hotspot areas, they could go to the west. I think it's Lviv or whatever. There's like the country the size of half of Europe, right? Yeah. And it's not uniformly. You have Angelina Jolie strolling around downtown Kiev, right? Or Kyiv. You know, so even the women and even the little beautiful little child who you would be the perfect model example. I'm harsher. I say, well, why doesn't he just go to a safe part of Ukraine? Why doesn't he go to Poland, to Belarus, or well, maybe not Belarus, but why does a guy from Syria, instead, if he's in northern Syria and the trouble is there, why doesn't he go south or to somewhere else instead of going to Ballybollocks, basically, somewhere in the back of Donegal? Yeah. Anyway,
you won't get 200 quid a week down there, and you won't get.
But
yeah, I know. But I don't get me wrong either. I mean, I know the crack here is that there is a lot of women and so-called women and children coming over from Western Ukraine where there's no war, and they're letting on that they're fleeing the war. I did speak to a
understandably.
I did speak to a woman before we started filming. I did speak to a woman who was picking somebody up from Mariupol, which was going through, and I know somebody else that came through there that was from Mariupol and showed me the videos of the actual apartment block where they'd been blown up, basically, right? So I had to take these people's word on it that some of them are genuinely fleeing war, right? Okay, I don't know, if they were and they arrived at the thing, you know, but you don't keep them here forever and give them a free house or whatever. They have to go back.
They have to go back. But anyway, regardless. So let's take those are the debatable ones. Fair enough. We could go back and forth on that. You then discovered.
Yeah. So when I saw this and I said, right, time to start the camera rolling, and these, you know, I said in the video, I didn't even know whether these guys spoke English or not, but they were definitely, the clothing they were wearing, right, it was like somebody that was just after coming out of Louis Copeland's, right. It was top end gear they were wearing, like, and I mean, to me they looked like they were could have been doctors or lawyers,
engineers,
engineers, accountants, surgeons, brain surgeons, and I said, right, Brian, let's start the camera rolling here. We'll do something outside, you know, and without, you know, I suppose it was, what's it going, 30 seconds to a minute. Your man sees me, whatever. Yes. This guy who's a principal officer in the Department of Justice, right? A principal officer, not an ordinary executive officer or whatever.
Principal officer.
And with a track record, he's only there a year. He was parachuted in from Concern, right? His Twitter account is, you know, all for LGBT stuff and take your jabs and the whole lot. You know, it's mass immigration, you know, the poor people abroad, bring them all in, and obviously put in there for a reason into that position. Like, he won't ask any questions, he'll just keep bringing them in. You know, maybe I won't say too much about any legalities, but look, he was down there like these people need to be protected from being filmed. You know, what are you doing to these people? Like, you know, you're hurting these. I said, no, I just want to ask a few questions. And my thing on it as well, he would say, oh, Phil, you did really well, and you handled them well. And it's like, I can see this guy from coming behind, right? And I can see that these people, and it's like this woman here as well, and if you approach it like this, is that they have nothing but contempt for you, right? They hate you, they have nothing, but they treat you, you're coming up here to question their philosophy and their ideology or whatever.
It's like 50 years ago, and Catholic viewers won't like this, or like, you know, people who like to defend, because the Catholic Church gets a bad rap and all that, so they'll think I'm feeding into that. Apologies, Lance, or whatever. I'm just speaking it like it is. It'd be like 60 years ago if you went into the church with if they had a video camera back then. He said, "What's going on here, lads? What's the story? I see you've been there's been a few altar boys.
There's been allegations.
Like what's going on?" They'd go, "How dare you walk into church?" Like asking
a question. Inappropriate.
Who do you think you? Well, they'd say, "Who do you think you are? Like, you know, you're scum. Who do you think you are to come in here and question me? Ask me questions." It's just like that. Go ahead.
Which makes it like, when you have that attitude approach, if they look down their noses, they treat you with contempt. I just treat them with contempt and look down their nose, and my nose at them. And it makes it easier when you're dealing with them. It's like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do here to stop? Why can't I just go over and talk to these people? That's all I want to ask them, civilized questions. Where they're from, what's going on with them, or whatever. We've been hearing reports that they're bringing in all these military-age males and they're not genuine refugees. I and he was and eventually but they are easy to flummox, because they have nothing, they have no argument.
They are on the back foot inherently.
Once they're tackled.
Yeah.
And I say that to never be afraid of these people. And anyway, he he just gave up on me, and I walked towards the lads, and then you just let them. They just revealed it all for everybody to see. And then I saw a video. Did you see the video at the airport of the fight in the airport, Dublin airport? There was a video on that, and they were from a minority, these people, but points in the hand or whatever, and the next thing, this boxing match started in the and it got serious. One fella got a bad kick in the head, and they were just running amok in the airport, right? Nobody near them, just doing what they had to do. Like, the video went on for minutes, and there was no sign of any airport police, right? But when a little journalist with a little phone and a selfie stick comes along and tries to film some illegal immigrants or fake refugees coming in, he was over. Like, he was marching over. Somebody had called him, there's a guy filming here. Like, but when there was an out and out scrap in the airport, in the terminal, the big terminal, there was nobody to be seen.
Yeah.
And a guy got seriously injured by the looks of things. It turned out horrific in the end.
But I've seen a lot of that over the years. Like, one of the first things I ever came across red pill wise was, I was at in the Metropole Hotel, I think in Cork on McCurtain Street. I was in there for a thing I'd seen I was in those kind of circles. So I saw a thing advertised on Facebook, a public meeting, some politicians are going to be there talking about asylum in Cork or something like that, right? And asylum seekers will be there, and there'll be NGO people there, the whole thing. So I went along, just little old me with the old camera, and I'm sitting there just watching it, and then I take out the phone and I just start recording. And suddenly this thing sweeps in, they all go, whoa, 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 and someone like grabs my arm, and someone's pointing down from the panel, like, to me like that, right? Like I'm in I'm in North Korea, and I go, oh, wait, this is a public meeting, what's there to hide, basically, like, and I wasn't even thinking this way at the time, but I just it got reacted. I was like, why? I mean, if I'm like Johnny, anybody can come in off the street, so what's the harm in getting it on camera?
What he was afraid of.
What's the big deal, right? Yeah. And they said, oh, the asylum seekers can't be on camera because it'll put them at risk or whatever. And then I thought, well, one, I'm not recording the asylum seekers, and I'll make extra effort not to if that's the issue. But two, shouldn't the whole thing be legal anyway? Like, if they're under some, so what they're saying is, oh, the vulnerable asylum seeker might have been rejected twice and has been asked to leave, but maybe hasn't, and you'd be abridging his thing. And I go, but isn't that just breaking the law then? Yeah. Like, I mean, so you're just openly saying, like, I saw that was a big red. I was like, well, what's the big problem? The other one was Lithuanian. After all the stuff there with the asylum industry stuff and all that, there was never any violent incident or any trouble like that, right? And there was never even, I don't think, a protest in Lithuanian. There was only the meeting, and then there was online conversation about it.
I don't know if you're aware of this now. A fella rang me the other night there. Somebody was watching my videos, but he had my number. But he rang me. He's from Uachtarard, and he's told me, Uachtarard now, they have bypassed the locals, the people of Uachtarard, and they've moved them in. That there is a presence now, direct provision in there by stealth.
They just bring them in one by
one.
Bring
them in.
Exactly.
So they bypass the people again. So in other words, they do not care.
But again, ultimately, I held Uachtarard's hand as far as I could take them. You know, that kind of way. But and they did well it was a good stand. There was a good resistance while it lasted, let's say. But and it was symbolic as well. But again, in Lithuania, there was, you know, these asylum seekers were brought in by night at like 4 or 5 in the morning in buses, and they were brought in by heavy Garda escort. And again, you go, okay, so if an allegation comes out that some asylum seeker in this hotel is brutally raped, and this, would you remember in, what was it? Oh man, it was in the north somewhere, border sort of, Monaghan, Cavan, somewhere like that. I can't think of the name of it. There was a woman raped by a Roma gentleman. Right. This was the allegation. I think it was, you know, seen as generally accepted as true by almost anybody who was familiar with the situation. Followed her into her house, brutally raped and beat this woman. It was really very bad. Sinn Féin stepped in. There was all this stuff going on, and again, the guards would have been, you know, whatever about that. Probably they investigated in the standard sense or whatever. But there would have been, no, we're going to surround this asylum centre and investigate the place, and no big deal, just standard. But when it comes to Liston and Varna, they have to go out of their way to protect this whole structure. But one of the points as well, we've spent a while, and that's half an hour probably, on asylum seekers. And well, if it's women and children, or is it foreigners? Is it like Indians pretending to be this and that? One of the things is like, I don't know if you remember Lord of the Rings with the elves, right? The elves were like people who would live for 1,000 years. They were beautiful looking. They barely, you looked at whatever it was about their species, they barely even needed to eat. They just walked around being enlightened. They didn't work. They just spent their lives being sort of ethereal, right? You go, well, I suppose if we were like that, then the conversation about, well, let's bring in poor women and children and refugees and fake refugees and mostly fake refugees, that'd be a conversation I suppose you could have, because we're in, but it's like, no, Irish people are struggling very badly. We're not some race of elves here that are just having a grand old time and, oh, but people are suffering in this country. You go, but people are suffering in this country though, no? Where did the Irish refugees go? I mean, they banished off to some other foreign country, I suppose, in exile to work in Australia, but it's just like, who cares about the Irish victims of violence, of poverty, of alienation, of crime, of emigration, yes, effectively refugees.
It's like, I've seen a few people as well, that you talk to them every now and again, you meet them, the ordinary Irish, and they'll tell you, no, but the Irish don't want to work, you know?
Oh my God.
And it's like how, if they don't want to work, how do they go abroad? And they generally work, and they generally thrive, and they generally do excel in their trades. Like, we get the best nurses and doctors go abroad, which is, it's a nonsense. They are forced. They go abroad because they know they're going to be treated badly. The housing situation.
Race to the bottom as well.
Like, the race to the bottom. The mass migration that's coming in, and they know that their better chances are if they go abroad, and they will be appreciated more. And that's just a fact. And it's like, it's not irreversible either. Like, it's very easy to fix. You know, we can put in place policies there where, first of all, entice people to come back, and then entice people not to come here, and entice people to leave with financial incentives. You know, that's not difficult. Right? We're paying through the nose to house foreigners and school them and give them health, medical services and everything else. But that all has to stop. They're only coming here because of all these benefits that are offered to them, and all that money that could be transferable into encouraging Irish people who are abroad, or whatever, 500,000, 1 million, or whatever, and they probably would like to come back. We'll have to change again the education system as well,
and get Irish people to have. Speaking of kids and all that, I get Irish people to have kids too.
Yeah, encourage them.
The amount people talk about women's rights, like women, equity, and all this kind of stuff. So many young women, I say young because I was talking my age or younger, let's say, right?
Yeah.
However young that is or not, would love to have kids and would love to do it all. Like, you know, they like, if they got the 2-3 years maternity leave or whatever, they want to have kids. But so it's like the greatest thing you could do for women, even progressive women. Most of them just are like, would like to be supported in having kids and be able to afford it. That is, there's more want for that than there is more female CEOs or more this or more that. So this kind of so-called feminism, it is anti-woman effectively, in truth. Just about the Irish workers. I was having a back and forth on Twitter yesterday. The restaurants for the 100th time they're doing this. They're saying, oh, we're finding it hard. We're struggling to find staff, right? Find staff meaning that they don't want to pay them anymore. And the hospitality industry in Ireland has been one of the most despicable industries over the last 20 years. Yeah. When was the first time you heard foreign languages being spoke in Ireland? When you went out to get a meal, right? So they were delighted to have their cheap labour that could be abused. And again, this sounds like a cliche. I've nothing against the foreigner who's scrubbing a pot as a kitchen porter for no money, right? In fact, I'd identify with that person and I'd respect that person. It's the gone-bean, it's the industry itself abusing them, and then by extension the Irish people as well, by lowering the standards. And it's just like they're asking now for non-EU migrants to be more accepted at a higher level, to be basically stamped through, waved through, more than they already are, because we know they are already. And even if you open the door, this is how despicable they are. Even if you open the door entirely, hinges off the door and said, it's open lads, just walk on in. If that wasn't enough, if there weren't enough just coming, because the property prices are too high. Even the foreigners know it's a shitty deal now. If that wasn't working, the restaurant association would actually actively ask the government to bring them in, to actually say we need to actually like go to some so-called war zone and bring them in 10,000 at a time. They'd be like, they'd look at them as bundles of bags of sugar or something, like items just to bring in. And again, they ask this with like openly. They don't even lie. They say we need this. And when you come in and say something as simple as, and I really enjoy this, saying maybe running a restaurant just isn't for you, because if I opened a garage selling cars and I was just not very good at it or something like that, and I went, I can't make my overheads, I pay the bills, I pay this, I'm paying the staff what I can afford to pay them, and it's just I don't get enough profits to pay for the stuff. Like, what's the obvious thing someone would tell me? They would say, well, I suppose you just have to shut it down then. I suppose, like, obviously it's just not working out, but they're suddenly turned into communists. They start saying, oh, no, I now am like a fixture in society and I must be propped up at all costs, as if I'm some sort of national monument or something, right? Even if it loses money, you need to prop me up like a failing bank or something. It's like, no. You probably, through all the booms and stuff, did very well on the cheap migrant labour, and then Irish people too getting paid the same wage. And when they worked really hard and someone said, what about their poor conditions? What about, isn't that just too hard work for them to be doing for €10 an hour? They would say, listen, it's a free market of labour and jobs. If they don't like it, sorry, the language is, it's a few drops of wine there is coming. I will curse it. If the Gombean restaurant owner would say, listen, if they don't like it, they can fuck off. They can fuck off somewhere else and get a different job. I'm not forcing them to be here. It's an open market between labour and pay, and that's it. So don't come to me crying about the poor conditions and the poor stuff. If they don't like it, they can leave. And then when you come back to them and you say, well, if you can't get staff on what you're able to or willing to pay, then I suppose you should just shut your doors and say you failed in your business. And maybe we don't need a restaurant every 200 metres. Maybe that's the market. Maybe that's the invisible hand of capitalism, so to speak, just doing its thing. And suddenly they go, oh, no, we can't do it. I'll shut up.
Yeah, but so like, I had the in a past life, I had the experience of running a bar and a restaurant, and it was an amazing educational experience. But again, the vast majority of restaurants fail within a year or two. Like, I mean, they go out of business, cafes, restaurants, or whatever. A lot of it's to do with the quality, the standard of food. But I mean, at the end of the day, my biggest bugbear when I was trying to get this thing, I was asked to go in and do it. I hadn't got any experience, but I mean, I did okay. You know, I came up. Brag about it too much, but it was like what I wanted to do was get the quality in there, and with the quality in there, you had to pay the money. You had to pay for the good staff. You had to up your rates, and that was the biggest with the owner and myself. It was always pay the bare minimum, and expect then to get the best service, the best food quality, and everything else. And that just isn't going to happen. You're going to have to bite the bullet, and you're going to have to say. And I had an opportunity with this really high-end chef came into me. He was at a loose end. He had just a deal had fallen apart from with a hotel, and he was looking for a job, and he had these massive credentials, and he wanted a real salary that was more than. But he was making promises that if he didn't deliver on, we could have just said, okay, fair enough. But he was. I couldn't get the deal over the line with the boss. It was too much money he was looking for. But I know in the concept of the business, if we had got him in, I strongly believe that the whole place would have taken off. The food quality would have gone through the roof. He would have been top of his game, and his credentials were there. He worked in all over the world. This guy, and there was others, but I couldn't get it because there was this push for this low wage to keep these wages down. And again, it doesn't work at the end of the day. The best restaurants that survive the longest are the ones that pay their staff properly. And then you go to a place like, back in my previous life, like Marco Pure Whites in Dawson Street, you know, giving them a plug, they might get a free meal after, but it's like,
I don't know about that.
But like always, the best of staff and the quality of the waiters and everything else, and they're on serious money because it's serious work, and that's how things will survive. Quality will win out in the end.
There's also like Marco Pierre White.
The race to the bottom.
Yeah, but that's like a central Dublin high end sort of a flagship sort of restaurant type thing. But again, every city in the world, no matter where you are, will have a high end restaurant in the city centre. They'll have several of them. But the idea I hate, and I'm not a capitalist by any means, right? Far from it. I'm just kind of sarcastically using their own thing against them to say, listen, this was your rules. You didn't mind exploiting labor, so if you're going to turn into the communist, maybe I'll turn into the capitalist, right? And see how it goes. But like, I just think as well, there probably is something to the notion that, like, all these restaurants popped up in when the Celtic Tiger came along. I'm guessing you're a few years older than me. Before that, there were restaurants, but there weren't every fifth, fourth building was restaurant, cafe. All that came along on the cheap labour of the Celtic Tiger. And since then, they've just convinced themselves that this is a God-given right as an industry. The Adrian Cummins or whatever, these restaurant organisations, they basically exist on cheap, abusable labour. And the fact is now that even if they wanted to pay the higher wages for the better chefs to have a higher quality place, again, a higher quality restaurant generally will do well if it earns a good reputation. But every fourth building having a really good restaurant, they can't all exist. So basically the market is kind of saturated. And the problem is now to pay the good staff enough to get them in, which is the whole argument basically that they won't pay. The problem is that fuel prices have gone up, property prices have gone up, all this has gone up.
Prices, gas, electricity, they're huge. That's
food,
a huge effect.
Food as well, by the way, which was a big thing. Back when house prices originally went up, let's say in the original boom of the Celtic Tiger, house prices are up, all of this. And even when they were getting higher a few years ago, the idea was that, well, that's the modern economy. You get expensive housing, but you kind of generally, it ebbs and flows, but you generally get cheap fuel. And the big one that the Western global homo regime always sold itself on was all these things are getting more expensive, but the food is starting to become almost free. You walk in, you get deluxe Tesco brand,
because of the competition,
lemon curd, blah blah blah, all this fancy food that people 100 years ago never ate, and you get it basically for free or very 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 cheap. Now you go in and you buy a basket of stuff at €100, and then your rent is high, your fuel is high, your stuff is, there's foreigners coming in, your children are being told to cut their like willies off effectively. Because that's the brutal reality of that trans thing, by the way. At the end of the day, and so you kind of go, wait, I'm failing to see now where the upshot is anymore. And things like restaurants are getting pulled under. So there's a few exclusive restaurants in town will get away with it, but all these gumbeans who thought they had a God-given right to run a restaurant in half the middle of nowhere, like shitty food anyway, they now think they have a right to exist. And the thing I would tell them is to say, listen, communities were destroyed. The people from up the road who used to come to your restaurant, now they all commute, they all get Deliveroo from cheap foreign labour driving it to them. And the prices have all gone up, so people are now staying at home. The wallet has tightened up. So basically, we're not actually in a free market. We're in a planned economy, and your role is coming to an end. There's no more room for Declan O'Leary, who runs a shitty restaurant that no one really likes, but it's there, so people kind of go anyway because they've free cash, disposable income.
Everything you've outlined, all them factors. I mean, that makes the business like I've struggled so much with this business that I had for 5 months, and it was very, very stressful. I inherited a mess, basically. I won't go into the details, but it was a mess, a financial mess or whatever. I tried my best to drag it back. But the overheads and the costs of running restaurants, even with the energy prices back then, now they've gone up by nearly 100%. And it's like, most of them aren't viable. They're losing money, and as you said, they need to probably just bite the bullet and say, look, when this isn't happening, it's not viable, leave it. There's no point in winching their way. But the Restaurant Association showed the true colours over COVID. They show themselves to be utter scumbags. Whoever is in charge of that, I've often felt like going in. I tried to get in touch with the Vintners Federation and the restaurant associations and all that when this was going on, and at the time we were going to ask them to speak to opposing opinions to the narrative, like the likes of Dolores Cahill or Ira Cumming, or people like that could say, listen lads, you're being had here, you should open your doors, you should protest this, open your doors or whatever, stand against it. And they wouldn't do it, like, you know. But the Restaurants Association of Ireland... But
again, the restaurants were paid their little salary, their little bursary or whatever, right? And then they're given their little sort of, it's kind of like a subsidy of cheap foreign labour delivered to their door, and gift wrapped basically, right? That's what the government will offer them. And what's the other input they're given? So yeah, they get all of that from the state basically, and then in return, when something like COVID happens, we'll give you the little stipend to keep you going, and you'll show loyalty you'll hold ranks as an industry because we give you your cheap labor. And again, that's why now I'm like, listen, I don't care if there's a certain amount of restaurants will stay open, and if you want to go for a fancy dinner, you can go for a dinner. But all these spare restaurants that existed are now obsolete.
Yes, yeah.
And they're obsolete from the point of view of the centrally planned economy. They're obsolete now. So now they're being waved goodbye, and they're kind of given out. But I don't even think they're giving out will work. The foreigners, that's the other thing. The prices are going up, so all the margins are being squeezed, and then the margin of the cheap foreign labour to come in to scrub the pots for nothing, onto social hours and live like a slave. Well, the housing costs are too much, so they might be sitting back in Somalia, Syria, Guatemala, whatever. They're sitting there going, yeah, I'm kind of poor here, but to be honest, I'd be poorer there doing that and work harder. So now, even if the government roll out the red carpet and say, please come in, we'll pay for your flight, the person who's in the third world basically is going, nah, you're grand. Yeah. That's how bad the situation is here. So now the restaurants, by virtue of all that, are being squeezed out. And I'm delighted. I'm like, do you know what? You've been the most scummy industry. You've worked people to the bone. You've been cruel. You've been scumbags. Same guys who wear like that guy who said, oh, fuck it, in Cork, the guy with the little hat, the trilby.
He was
like, go home, we're doing very well. Oh, we're delighted, right?
Yeah.
And I'm off to Lanzarote again for the 5th time this year and all this. And they think they're Donald Trump. They convince themselves that I'm some mad entrepreneur. No, you're not. You were existing on effectively labour slavery. And again, one more note for anyone who's new and thinks, oh, we're giving out about foreigners and stuff. I side with foreigners. Like, for example, Lithuania. Recently, they had a border crisis with Belarus and Iraqis. And it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
But they had migrants flooding over the border, and the Lithuanian government, who were under NATO and Europe, were putting them into asylum centres, right? And the Lithuanians in certain villages protested, and they were tear gassed by their own police, by their own government, right? Now, I thought gassing people was bad, but anyway, swept under the rug, no worries, right? Gas your own people, anti-democratic, gassing your own people. I thought this was what we were all about, right?
Yeah.
Nobody in the West heard anything about that.
Yeah, I did.
And that's Lithuanians. So again, someone would go, oh, you've got something against Lithuanians because they're foreigners in Ireland. I go, no, I don't. How could I be against Lithuanians when I side with Lithuanians for their problems? Because we're all getting it. And go, okay, so you like it's like, no, I'm very interested in all the foreign cultures of the world, and I don't want them to be economically undercut and culturally destroyed by all of these global measures. One of the things I would just say, I know I'm rambling now, sorry, but one of the things is that we're sort of, regardless of our talk about foreigners and national and all this, actually us and foreigners of the world globally, kind of all in it together. We're all being moved around and destroyed economically and culturally. Yeah, so it's kind of like, you'll find allies in foreigners, and foreigners will find allies in Irish people. It's us sort of, to a point, against the rich regime, effectively.
Against the mechanisms of control. I mean, we'll all be put under the same control, like the digital currencies, the COVID passes, the social credit system, like
globalism
will be made into an economic unit. That's the goal of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And whether you're a migrant or whether you're native to a particular island or land or whatever. So I mean, and I'd say to some of the local residents here, like living near in the same block here, like women who are awake, and they're kind of consistently Eastern European people that
there's a lot of that
for sure. They've lived under, they're my age maybe, and they lived under impression, they know what it is when they see it, and it's like, I just say to them, I mean, why would you want to be, we're the worst country in the world to live in, right? Well, how could you send your kids to a school in Ireland if you're coming from somewhere like Poland or Hungary or somewhere like that? Like, your kids are going to be destroyed if you send them to a school in Ireland at the moment, the way we are now. And if I was you, I'd love to get the hell out.
It's almost it's almost like, not only if I was you, it's kind of like, well, maybe even if I was me. Maybe you almost start looking at flight. But the thing is, actually a lot of Eastern Europeans are going back because there's the cultural rot, and in which they're going to be a victim to as well. Thank you, Phil. But there's the economic situation too. They look at their home situation. They go, I'd be better off there, and at least I'd be at home, right? Yeah. So they're leaving to they can't even get the non-European ones in. Basically, they've lowered the bar so much that it's like below the global bar. Like the race to the bottom has gone so far that actually people in all corners of the world are like starting to say, not interested. Actually, to be honest, you can have your destroyed, discombobulated.
Have you seen what's going on in Sri Lanka? Reports
Yeah,
coming back in. I think it's fascinating, in a sense that the people now are that they're in the zone where the food and the niceties, the comforts are gone, have been taken away from them, and see the reaction. I mean, like when you look at it, they're human beings as well, right? Who have been deprived of their ability to live and feed themselves and everything else. And look what's going on. I mean, I've seen images of ministers, government ministers, and things like that. Allegedly, like they've been lined up, stripped naked, handcuffed, and beaten. And it's like, okay,
no,
the game is up. Now it's time to pay the piper. Like,
and I think you would agree with me that we would be gutted and we would condemn any such situation happening, but it could happen, and if it happens, it happens. That's all we'll say, let's say, right? If it happens, it happens.
We're like, I would be one of these people, but trying for us not to get there.
Oh, civilized,
The people we're up against seem to be hell bent on bringing us down that road. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that, guys, we're not that far away. All the indicators are there with the inflation and the cost of living, that suddenly there's a crash, right? And I'm talking to people in the building supplies, your timber and your plumbing supplies and everything else. Certain big building companies have stopped new builds or stopped building, right? There's all the signals, right? That it's just becoming not viable.
Well, they stay having to pay developers $100,000 to build a house. I mean,
an apartment,
so you go from the restaurant, an apartment.
You can't sell an apartment for the price that it costs.
And a restaurant can't hire a staff member for the costs it takes to run a restaurant and hire a staff member, and houses can't be built for the cost that you can sell a house for. Because if they were to build it at cost price, basically, even in the market sense, people would just be like, I can't buy it. And you'd say, oh well, if they can't buy it, the producer needs to lower the price. They can't. The margins have hit a wall, and what are you going to do?
No business can function like that.
And that all these things then have knock-on effects. So,
I don't think we're that far away. As part of me wants it to happen sooner rather than later.
Oh, absolutely.
Just let this crash happen. Let this chaos come in, and the survival of the fittest nearly is what we might be down to. It's a worrying thing, but I just think they're just hell bent. They're in such a bubble. I mean, I'm outside the door. I've spoken to a couple of Timmy Dooleys of this world, and they're like spurting out this shit as if they actually believe it themselves. I mean, it's
it's a real bubble.
And so in other words, it's not real. It's not the real world, and then suddenly the real world's going to come in on top of them. They won't know what's going to hit them. They won't know what to do. God help them is all I can say. I don't wish violence on anyone, but when you see the likes of Sri Lanka, it's a human natural reaction. When your life is put in danger from not being able to feed yourself, and then you can find somebody to blame for that, and you can get a figure, and that's okay, this is what you did to the country. We're here because of you. I can't eat because of you.
And that's when, and of course, right, like there's no one, of course, would condemn that more than to us, right? Obviously. no, but what I'm saying is there's no one would condemn it more than two of us. But also that free speech, the idea of having an open conversation, like we just want to have a conversation about it, and then from that conversation enact certain policies based on an open conversation. Then you avoid the kind of hotter stuff. Much better. So we're basically peaceniks. We're basically hippies.
Maybe this is what I'm doing subconsciously, is trying to put this message out to these people who are in these positions, is that lads, you need to reconsider what you're doing and come back from the brink of catastrophe. You're about to walk off the cliffs of Moher here. And no one again. I'm trying to help you guys. You cannot silence people like us. You need to talk to us. Gerald Murphy needs to be in the Dáil or in a press conference or whatever, asking questions. I need to be at a press conference asking questions. If you don't do this, guys, you're bringing us into a world of hell. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
And yeah, again, you can't, like, then you could kind of come back to a center. It doesn't mean people like us would get everything we want, but it just means like a few concessions,
yeah.
a little bit of opening it up would be much better. Basically, open it up a little bit and include dissident voices who are effectively, they might be dissident officially, but they're actually represented. Like the stuff we're saying, there's people up and down the country. Even I've been in the past many times gaslit thinking, oh, I'm just a marginal figure. Not personally, but like my views are marginal views or something. You actually return to normality and talk to normal people, and you go, holy shit, my mind is blown. I didn't know what I'm saying is actually vanilla, absolute vanilla. It's actually tame compared to what people are talking about. You sit down and you talk to a bunch of 10 Irish normies, right? Average people you meet, and you go, oh yeah, the Ukraine situation or whatever. 1 minute later, they'll be going, where the hell are they all going to put them? Where are they going to put them? We can't already afford housing. And you go, well, that's the conversation I'm called an extremist for having. But 10 of you, who I don't know, you're all having it. So it's actually all built sort of on lies, really. It's just turning on the
They feel comfortable in the group. But I had funny that the last time I was out there for a pint in the local with the locals here in Tallaght, there was a group like that, say like of 10 middle-aged elderly guys sitting around at the bar, and I was talking to my buddy, and he's awake, and I'm like saying, look around you there, look at this demographic here, right? And watch them, right? And it's like they are so disconnected. Mm-hmm. They're disconnected from the reality of what's happening to their world or whatever, right? And to me, it's like there's just so much information being pumped into everybody's heads between media, mainstream media, social media, internet, and everything else, right? It's really like they just throw their hat at it and said, I just can't deal with this, so I'm just going to go for a pint and I'm going to watch the telly and I'm going to watch Sky Sports or whatever, and I can't deal with it. And that to me is like a huge portion of the population, even though they kind of fundamentally know that there's something wrong.
They know.
The subconscious, they know, but they've just said
completely
fucking
demoralized. Completely checked out.
I just can't deal with this. There's so many absurdities being thrown at them on a daily basis. Like the ones I keep saying, there's so much to go after out and about in the streets. The absurdities of politicians. Is that there's so much of it that the human brain just gets to a point where it's just full of it. And it causes a kind of a blockage, like that thing that comes up on your virus on your Microsoft or whatever, and it's dun dun. And they just say, oh no.
Okay, whatever. I'm just going to click minimize.
You can have as many of these bogies coming from Georgia, stay in the hotel there and chase the women down. I just want to go watch Man United.
And you can turn on Telly Bingo, and it's like a transgender person doing the bingo. Do you remember? These were all little things that at the time I was like, what's going on? What's that? Who asked for that? But anyway, these were all like shock therapy for people, like getting like old grannies and stuff to be like comfortable with it. Very clever actually that. But back to and this is one of the last things really. But like or it's not even a thing. I'm just sort of talking, rambling. The planned economy thing, like I said with restaurants, they were included in the planned economy, the people who get to do well for 2 decades, right? And now they're kind of being shuffled off exit stage left, right, with the hook. And that's how it is. And there's kind of kicking and screaming, but actually even bringing in foreigners won't work anymore for them. So they're going to be sort of faded out, right? And so it's like a bit of, oh shit, hoisted by their own petard or whatever. But we do live in a planned economy, and I was thinking about that just driving down here. Like, the way they maintain power ultimately, this would be in any regime, even from thousands of years ago, but it's very true now because there's so much spare money around, because machines make everything, so there's spare revenue. So basically the people in control of currencies and money and all of that stuff have so much free money that gets made from tech and computers and all this without even needing labor, that they have all this built up capital, and that they can just print money off as well, of course, that they can just hand out to different sectors. So they say, okay, one of the things they consciously did with Irish boomers and older around the Celtic Tiger was they said, you'll do well, you'll have 3 properties in Bulgaria, you'll have a pension, nobody after you will have a pension, the whole thing will cave in, but you'll get it, you'll get 5 holidays to Lanzarote a year and blah blah blah, and you'll think you're like, again, Warren Buffett or some kind of genius because you did well, right? And so that'll be you bought off, you'll sell your children and grandchildren down the river. And then different sectors, NGOs, college students who wouldn't have a role in society because they're not very talented. You can be an NGO, an activist, a journalist, whatever, as long as you're loyal. All these little ways to kind of pick people out. Tradespeople at the moment are doing well enough, but it's a big chessboard, and there are people in a room somewhere who are going, okay, we'll take men of this age, women of this age, these little demographics, we'll buy all them off, and then all these guys will get shagged. Yeah. But this will just be about enough to sort of keep an even keel. There'll be enough of the more powerful people, influential people. Yeah, influential. Stuff like Gaeltacht's giving them a load of money, and there's that. There are ways to like buy off these little areas, and all that stuff. And so we'll just maintain this balance, you know. And what I see happening now is that the margins, like I was saying, petrol, everything getting more expensive at the same time, and things just not working. I think that thing starts to come apart a little bit, where you go, well, now I know you've a lot of people paid off, but it's all starting to crumble a little bit, and I don't know.
To.
Yeah,
it just is one big bubble that's going to have to burst. It's like a pyramid scheme.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I'm not coming across now as a financial expert, but I mean, again, it's just common sense. Like, you cannot just keep printing money, you know, and it's going to have to break down eventually.
Well,
and it's going to happen to me. It's going to happen sooner rather than later. And the inflation thing, I think, is a sign of that. Like that, yeah, it's all going to come to an end, very quickly. I'm terrified. I don't know where it's all uncharted waters, like, you know. So and again, the people that have been bought off now, there's no way they're going to accept. I know a lot of them. I used to, you know, rub shoulders with a good lot of them back in my previous life, and they are so comfortable. They have such large bank accounts or whatever, but sooner or later that money is going to be gone. It's going to be worthless.
Yeah.
You know, like what happened in Germany after the war.
Yeah.
Inflation went up 1,000,000,000%. I don't know what it was. Wheelbarrows full of cash couldn't buy a loaf of bread. You know, I think that's where we could be heading. You know, it's that serious. That it's not that I don't think these people even know that, like, the puppets who are in government, and then the people who are running the puppets, like whatever, UN, EU, World Health Organization, or whatever, and then there's all these other people that could be running it too.
Sure.
But it's like, I don't think they understand themselves. They think it's like one big part of it. There's never-ending cycle of money coming in. Part of me thinks that this last month they're being told possibly that bring in all these migrants, house them, build a house or whatever, you know, borrow for it, and then after a while now, eventually it's coming. It'll be one big digital currency, and you're definitely wiped out, right? So you'll have all this done, and we'll have our economic units, and we'll have all this divided society and whatever. But they don't know. I don't think they genuinely know the consequences of this Ponzi scheme that they're running, like what the possibilities are. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but
makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's just basic maths, and it's basic economics. You know, I'm not an economist or anything, but I mean, you know, I've run a couple of businesses in my day. You know, like, there's no such thing as a free lunch, like, you know. Yeah. It doesn't happen.
And like a few weeks ago, I was chatting to Lastro Gale on a Telegram stream, and he was kind of explaining money to me and how it works, inflation and all that, and interest rates and stuff like that. And the takeaway for me was that money at the end of the day is just a sort of representative tokens, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what really is the currency that really exists is goods and services. The money is only a sort of a note, right? So it's just goods and services, and then assets. So stuff like property and all of that. So if you're I've been doing it too, but the hand on the table.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
it's you know, like the housing thing. Like, you can't have all these people come into the country all squabbling for houses, paying 400 grand for a shitty house in, you know, some Dublin commuter town or whatever. And you know, that's way too much money, and ultimately the thing will crash and the bank will be calling it back in. And then they'll bring more foreigners in to prop it up and blah blah blah. We're on round 2 now. We had Celtic Tiger and the current sort of boom or bubble. You know, you can't have bubble on bubble on bubble. At a certain point, it's not just a fact of like currency going up, currency going down, job market going up. You go, well, now there's just not enough houses. you can't build endless. In theory, you can do a Blade Runner where you build towers across the whole land, but that's not going to actually happen if it's not natural.
I think what we need to happen. One of the saddest things that I experienced was and the general election in 2020, and I was walking down the road near the basketball arena here in Tala, and I bumped into a couple, a young couple, and they had two children, a 4-year-old and a new baby, and both of them are still living in their parents' house, raising this family.
Yeah, very common.
And he was working in a a middle of the road job in a warehouse, driving a forklift or whatever, and she was working maybe in, let's say she was working in the beauty salon or something like that. Lovely, like 28, 29 years of age. And he was telling me he had no prospect of either qualifying for a mortgage, his his threshold, whatever, for HAP and things like that. He was above the threshold for HAP, and they were just, these kids were being reared in separate houses.
Yeah, there's so much of that. I know.
And what I would say, like, these are the men that need to start rising up.
Rise up.
Fight. You're gonna have to fight to change this. I would love to see a government come in that would encourage young couples like that, make it as easy as possible for them to have a home, have their home, and be able to raise their kids safely and everything else. This isn't rocket science, and it's not been, as long as you have the market flooded by mass migration, it's never going to happen, guys. But it can be stopped.
And sort of rampant globalist capitalism and all that. Like, it should be for an Irish couple who want to have kids. They say, I want to have 5 kids. We're going to raise them, and we're going to raise them in a social way. No one's taking drugs. All these things, right? This is a idyllic, effectively, potential environment. The government, because they have so much sort of money to throw around in NGOs and gummies and all this stuff, and foreigners, let's be honest, and minorities.
5 to 6 billion on NGOs.
Oh, exactly.
Imagine what you do with that.
Imagine how many people you could say, listen, we're not going to give you straight up UBI, but what we'll say is that if one is willing to go to work and you want to have 5 kids, easy. You won't have to worry about margins or how am I going to get by this month or that month. If one of you work and you have 5 kids,
you'll be supported.
You won't have to worry. You won't do nothing, and can't be reckless. But you don't have to worry. And if you're a criminal, if you're a scumbag, if you're an anti-social or whatever, it could be means tested, but in reason to be like, are you just a decent member of the community who just goes to work every day, comes back, feeds your kids well, takes them to sport, does your thing, raise them up, teach them well, and don't have to worry. I mean, simple. That should be obvious. And again, that's the kind of thing even to millennials, like people like us, could offer and say, is that such a crazy concept? Like, are we really the bad guys for suggesting such a thing? I don't know. Like, and they go, oh, well, what about the foreigners?
For our own people.
They go, what about the foreigners? And I go, listen, the foreigners that are here, let them stay here. It's called drawing a line. I know you could debate maybe repatriation and all that, but within reason. But realistically, I'd even settle for that. I'd settle for, hey, let's just only bring in critical people. Some guy who needs to come in to fix a certain piece of engineering and then leave or whatever.
I probably differ with you on that. I would just stop it completely. It has to stop. It's gone. To me, anyway, it's just gone way too much demographically over the last 20 years. It's just gone to insane levels. It would have to be stopped immediately. And I know this might make me popular in certain circles. Couldn't care less. It's just a fact. If the Irish nation and race wants to survive, the ethnic Irish wants to survive, that's what to me has to happen. A stop until we can, as Donald, God help us, Trump used to say, until we figure out what's going on, because we've just taken way too much. But I know what you're saying, critical.
It's debatable. The finer points.
It is debatable.
But and you say like the ethnic Irish and stuff like that. I'm not disputing that, right? I'm not trying to be PC here, obviously, right? That cat's out of the bag, would say. But another pitch. You can make 2 pitches at once, really. In a sense, it's not contradictory to say there's that aspect, but there's also even if you want to say there's the ethnic aspect matters absolutely, the Irish nation, right? But even a foreigner, I don't know, name one. Brazilian or Polish or whatever, right? It's like, even there's a pitch to be made to them. Even if you say, okay, like, is it in your interest, Polish person having to work their bollocks off same way an Irish person does just to make these high mortgages? Is it in your interest if 50,000 more foreigners, including Poles, come in next year or not? obviously, if they don't come in, the housing prices deflate a bit, and that's in your interest. So like, it can be in the interest of the ethric. But I'm not that bad yet. It's just a little, but
he's not going to allow to have a drink for a while. Okay?
I know, half a glass of wine I'm like dancing on the ceiling, But it's not in the interest of the ethno-cultural Irish nation to be replaced that way. It's also at the same time, so two things can be true. It's not in the interest economically of a foreigner that's here as is. So and then it's not in the interest of Irish women, progressive Irish women. It's like, well, we want you to be able to, if you want to go work a job, look, I'm not interested in going turning back the clock and all that particularly. If you really want to do a thing, you do a thing. My only thing is that, on the other hand, if you want to raise 5 kids, I also want you to raise 5 kids, and I want to make a country that works in that way. Helen McEntee doesn't really want to do that for you. None of the rest. So again, our pitch actually is the most should be the most popular thing. Foreigners, women, Irish nationalists, the whole, it's literally, I'm kind of going, who isn't this benefiting? It's not benefiting extremely rich gombeans and global plutocrats. Those are the only people on the wrong end of this thing. Yeah. But anyway, look, I just want to check because we've gone on and I'm enjoying it. But I have debt slavery, I have restaurants, I have Chico, I have Charlie Flanagan. You were chasing Charlie Flanagan around peacefully, respectably, but it was funny, it was good.
Yeah, that was, again, that these people just seem to appear in front of me and somebody is helping me out. And again, they're so easy. But there was the sinister side of that as well, I say to people, where this guy felt righteous and justified in just walking back. And it was the minute I said to him, mass migration.
Well, he knows he's got a guilty
conscience. And he went straight back to the guard to make some kind of complaint about me. Now, so this is an ex-Minister for Justice, ex-Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Yeah.
He felt it in his head that he had the right to go and report me to a guard for asking him a question about mass migration. Yeah. That's where we're at in society in Ireland now. That's how dangerous it is. Now, depending on that guard, I had actually spoke to that guard before he came out, just having a bit of a laugh and a bit of a banter with him and all this. How are the criminals getting on inside here and blah, blah, blah. He was an ordinary, decent guy by the looks of things. Mm-hmm. I could have got a guard there that was SJW and said, yeah, okay, I'll arrest him. Public order or whatever.
Threatening or something like that.
He's been harassment, whatever, right? I could have been unlucky in that way. But in front, your man stood there and he looked at him and he goes, what are you talking about?
Yes! Well, I didn't know that. That's excellent.
He just stood there and he was he's been harassing me talking about racism. I say he probably used the race thing, he's a racist and blah blah blah. And I want him removed or whatever. Your man just looked and goes, just asked you a question probably. Just stood there. And then when he came back again, I was still there, he comes back again and he brings him inside and he probably gave him a dressing down. Yeah. But your man just stood there and took it but that's how close we are to being free to be on the street with a microphone or whatever, or a phone, to be locked up in jail.
The point we really need to get to is the direct opposite, where you go up to the guard and you go, "Garda, arrest him."
That day I pray for.
I know.
We all pray for that day that justice will come to these people, and I think I strongly believe it will. There is a part of me everyone is too much and everything else. When you think of the ideologues that we're up against who are in control and power in this country, they are a small percentage of the population. There's a big
ideologues and paid off gombeans who aren't ideologues, but they're paid off. They're both of those.
So there's a big chunk in the middle here who are just floating along and who are being, poisoned with too much information they can't handle and everything else, and they don't want to move away from the herd possibly or whatever. There's a huge chunk there that possibly something could. You have to live in hope that something could trigger them into some common sense and back into morality as well, like the morality of society, And I'm not no holy job by any stretch of the imagination, but my God, how we've just allowed this to just go on. The hypnosis, and it is like a hypnosis. It definitely is.
I've often sometimes rambled at people anyway. The idea that it's a thought that's crossed my mind is the idea these days that people are confused by the concept of honor. Yeah. People think basically we've gone so far in the demoralized sort of society that when people come across a person acting in honor and not to boast or whatever, but I've acted in honour over the years, right?
Yeah.
Just by doing some of the stuff I've done and all that.
Yeah.
I like to think so, or
You've
whatever.
been bred to do the
Yeah.
right thing, but it's just trying to do the right thing.
But people will, even when they know you're not actually, I'm not saying anything hurtful to anybody else, and I'm only standing up for myself. They go, they'll go, I'm not even put out by what you're saying. I'm put out and confused by the idea that you would put yourself on the so-called shopping block. Yeah. And you go, but you'll watch Braveheart and love the concept of it.
Yeah.
But when it actually happens in life, you go, what's he up to?
Yeah. He's mad. He's
there's something wrong with him. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
go, so people are actually confused and they don't understand the concept of honour. Whereas, you know, they should say, okay, look, I wouldn't do it myself, but I understand what you're doing. You're standing up for what you believe in. But now people just, you could even try to explain it to them and they go, I don't get it.
and that's it. And I have very kind of, in my previous life, I keep going with that, very well-to-do people in my previous life, and I know that deep down they know what's going on is wrong and everything else, but they have disowned me or whatever, right? Good luck to you. And it doesn't, you know, that's your problem. But then again, you would like to think or wish that someone would come and say, well, here's some here's some support here.
Yeah.
You know, Phil, I admire what you're doing, but I have lots of people who are in certainly high-powered jobs who are on our side who've come to me. And by the way, I take this opportunity to thank everybody who supported me in the last few weeks since I started to just try to look for help doing this, because it does actually cost money and my circumstances have changed. I'm not going to go into those details, but thank you sincerely to everybody who supported me on that aspect of things. It is very important to me right now, but I really appreciate it anyway. Yeah. But like again, these people, I want to say to them, like, what are you doing? Your country has been destroyed in front of your eyes. You won't acknowledge, just even secretly say it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're trying to protect your business interests and all that, okay, you know, but secretly, you know, you can support this. You can, you know, say here, there you go. Support Garrod Murphy's channel. Support, you know, Dave Cullen or GT or whoever's trying to push the truth out there. We're not all we're not all ideologically perfect or whatever. We don't all have to agree on everything, but we are trying to push, trying to send us truth.
That thing, that's the ideological thing, because these so-called, apparently the left and right things. Yeah. Again, I think I'm more left on almost everything, right? I'm like social norms that were normal 15 years ago. I stick by them. Immigration, stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's right. That's right, far right.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm basically a lefty. Like, I don't believe in capitalism at all. I believe in I big time. No, I wouldn't be a full-on Bolshevik communist, but I believe in a socialist state. We'll say no more than that, right?
Okay.
But
I'm out of here.
Yeah. See, yeah. So like, you know,
no, I mean, there are things like left-wing things, or you know, I'd be on the left about. And again, international finance capital is the fucking ruination. Yeah, it's basic, and to me as well. I try to simplify this down for people as well. What's actually happening here, right? This is what happens when you let institutions, you let corporations, you let mainstream media companies, social media, tech companies, pharmaceutical companies get too much power, and financial institutions and things like BlackRock and Vanguard and all that. I hope that we don't get, you know, disappeared after this. These that own practically everything, so they direct all the social policies that they buy off everything and
buy and people off.
And this is what happens. We've let this get out of control, folks, as far as I can see. You know, but
it's you know, but again, like these so-called lefties and righties and all that. I mean, and like I say, foreigners, this, that, the everything else. The only people who should be outside of our proposition, really, is global plutocrats and local Gombian traders who are doing well for themselves. But everybody else, it's like, you don't really lose in this one, to be honest. I believe, like, even the foreigners in their own countries, I'm like, I want your country to be, but your country is part of the global system that's on the losing end of it, and this, and I'm like,
but I would love you to stay in your country and help fix your country.
And what about people in the Philippines, for example?
Yeah.
Oh, you're against the foreigners coming to Ireland to our hospitals because you think
if you get sick and you're going to tell a foreigner that you don't want them to look after you.
Yeah, or like, oh, you're saying that bringing in foreigners is sort of a race to the bottom and driving Irish staff overseas and all that. But I'm going, well, yes, I'm giving out about that, but I'm also, as part of that, it's that the Philippines is being stripped of its nurses and doctors. They have, like, per person, they have about 3 times less nurses and doctors per citizen than we do, because all their doctors and nurses are here. So listen, it's in your interest, it's in my interest, and only a rich international finance capitalist and a local scumbag, a demon of a Gambin,
which we always have,
are on the losing end. Us, the Filipinos, it's like everybody's benefiting. Everybody, left, right, everybody. It's just about overcoming the fear of being blacklisted. Effectively, that's all it is. But so just in regards to your activism, because I wanted to talk more about that, but then we ended up just kind of shooting the shit, right, about stuff in general. I wanted to make it more about you and everything you're doing, but we went 2 ways. Whatever. We're 2 hours now, so I'll let it go. But in terms of what you're doing, like, it's, again, I'll re-emphasize, it's not just that you're doing it better than anyone in the Irish scene. I pay attention to England, America, all that. There's nobody goes out with a selfie stick and does it like you do it. There isn't. So, like, again, the market doesn't necessarily reward you in the way, Ryan Tuberty gets 500 grand a year, right? And you might get some donations and stuff, but ultimately you're just doing it out of passion for the most part, right? As we all are. So there's not a true reflection of the value of it. But in reality, if Ryan Tuberty is worth 500 grand, you're worth 20 million, and the truth someday of that, I'm not talking about money, but the recognition has to come eventually. And I'm not a major religious, I've struggled with that stuff, right? But since I've had my son and all that, I am more of a believer in it, and like, I do believe God is on your side. He has to be. He's making these people appear in front of you. And when you're against such an evil, demonic, massive force, it's almost godlike in its size and scale, the big tech companies and all of that, you almost just have to believe in God. Because you're like, how can you oppose Blade Runner levels of totalitarian power unless you believe there's something
I bet you when your son was put into your arms for the first time, you certainly felt the presence of God. I can tell you that now.
Yeah.
That's the way I felt when my 3 were put into my arms. It was some kind of a miraculous happening.
How could you believe that that's just atoms? There's more going on there.
I think we have to do another stream on the fatherhood.
But so I just wanted to give you that, not just praise for the sake of it, but it's just true. And the other thing as well is, I wanted to ask you: you don't have any trouble driving? You're a safe driver. You don't stand on any ledges and accidentally fall off ever. And these kind of things don't happen to you. Because genuinely, I'm not trying to put the fear into you, but true dissidents who really get right up in the face of power in countries, we know how it works in other regimes. Our regime is no different. Again, I don't, if ever there's a man that's not afraid of things, it's you. But I think it's worth just putting on the record, if Phil is ever targeted, we know what the story was. And I don't want to, I might put the spook in you, but what I mean? It's just.
Look, at the end of the day, I mean, the minute I put my name on an election candidate form, I knew, like, that's it. You're out there with my views, and you're for Ireland, and you're a dissident, and you're against the regime and everything else, and. I did talk to my 3 sons about that at the time, and they all said go for it or whatever, because I knew it was a bit more than that. It's more serious, like, than when you do that, and what you're saying against these people, and they will hate you and they will want rid of you, But it's progressed into something that I didn't think it would, but I'm probably just working off my instincts, my life's experience or whatever. To try and just put some kind of a message of truth out there to people, something might trigger them into doing and to do some good. It's like it has to, nobody else is doing it. It has to be done. If it's not going to be done, we're in big trouble. Like, I mean, if nobody can come up to these guys, and even if putting the camera in your face and asking them a question is putting the fear of God into them, that makes me happy.
Well, and like, I have a son now. You have 3 sons. And I don't think it's a secret, We all have descendants on the way, right? Let's say.
Yeah.
You know,
I have a grandchild on the way. Yeah.
okay, I didn't want to be spilling any beans, you know, but again,
She's doing great. Great girl. Yeah.
epic, brilliant.
And yeah. So that's a look to look forward to as well.
But these things are all on the line, and again,
And that's what it's for.
and you want them in the future to look on after we're gone, to say, do you know what? They might have suffered a bit along the way and stuff, but I mean, a very rare thing for the time it was.
Yeah.
They actually had the balls to stand up and say, listen, I'm not saying anything. The only radical thing I'm doing here is telling you what I believe.
Yeah.
That's really it. Because it's like, oh, you know, you could get fired from a job or this or that, and I could go, listen, the only difference between, let's say you're in a certain job or this or that, or a certain college or school situation or whatever, you're ostracized in some way. If you were to suffer from it, you'd go, the only difference between me and my peers is not that what I say, it's because they all say it too, it's just that I'm saying it. So it's not the content of what's being said, it's the fact that you dared to say it.
Yeah.
And again, what an honor for, like, you know, kids and grandkids. I think it's a brilliant thing. But again, the point for you is that I'm not trying to put the fear into you, because I don't think it can be. But you know, we have Putin, we have Xi, and we have all these regimes around the world, and everybody knows you cross those regimes, you know, whatever. So again, you're not accident prone, you know. No. So don't
I'm not suicidal, but again, it's whatever.
Or like you wouldn't trip over an electric cable or something like that.
Whatever happens, I mean, I'm prepared for it. I mean, I'm not stupid in that sense. Mm-hmm. That I am taking chances and whatever else, but I don't care. I mean, it's like you can't think of that anyway. You just have to keep doing the right thing as best you can. That's all. Everyone can do a little bit.
And that's the thing I noticed with you as well. Everybody, including me and lots of others, who are in this kind of scene, or in the scene of speaking the truth and whatever, will second guess the risks and this and that. I noticed that you just kind of go for it, like, you know what I mean? Because it must be easier or something. Because I know it can be crippling, and that's part of how these things work. Yeah. How they make dissidents kind of goes down. It's in German they call it Zersitzung. In East Germany they used to call it that. They used to call it decomposition or something. Yeah. But it meant it was this targeted thing of picking someone apart psychologically, basically. Yeah. And I think you have a very good method. Yours is just kind of like you almost just throw blinkers on and go whatever. Just focus on the
truth, the facts, and the logic.
Yeah.
You focus on that. You're not going to go too far wrong. And I don't get me wrong. Something could go drastically wrong when I go out there, approach somebody. I could get arrested. You know what I mean? Somebody could attack me. I don't know.
But you can't get caught up in it.
That's it. You can't stop because of that. Journalists in the past, years ago, I kind of find it strange calling myself a journalist, but obviously that's what I am now. Absolutely. That's what I'm doing now. But it's like it's just such a necessary thing in my view that has to be done. But if you think about the bad things or whatever, look, you might as well dig a hole, bury yourself.
Yeah. And we're only around for another couple of decades anyway between us, you know, different, or potentially another year, you don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you don't know when you're going to keel over. Anybody, I could walk out in front of a bus, whatever.
But I've always perceived these people that you see, it's the recurring thing that I keep trying to show people as well, that how weak are the people we're dealing with. The Charlie Flanagans, the Ivana Bacic's, all these, they are horrific people, in my opinion.
Oh my God!
And they're so weak, and they can't sit down and defend their ideology, which they will run a mile from you, because it's satisfying when you're able to do things like that. It's satisfying for me because I know that I've done something right. That's all. I've just done something right to show these people for what they are. I'm not an intellect. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not. Do you know what I mean? I haven't studied history. I haven't got a master's in a history degree or anything like that. It's just the common sense I've built up. A sense of I obviously don't like injustice or whatever, and maybe that eats at me sometimes when I see it. Maybe to the point of my detriment. I don't know, but at the same time, I feel really good about I'm doing something worthwhile. Like that's it, Yeah, and we've had this conversation 2 years ago. It's kind of like it is something worthwhile to do.
Oh, here,
it's to speak truth to people.
For me, the asylum industry thing, right? That's kind of like my little magnum opus, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like a whole work for a while that came into one thing or whatever, and then I've kind of backed off over time and stuff. But the fact that exists, I don't look back at any money or this or that or achievement or whatever. that's one of the my son, of course, right? Number one.
Yeah.
But like I pick out stuff like that. The fact as one of the proudest achievements of my life. Even if someone said that'll haunt you for the rest of your life, you'll always have that and whatever. I go. Imagine if I had never done that and I went all the way to my grave like a slave. Oh, I couldn't do that. Like But yeah. So anyway, will we leave it there?
We better. Yeah, we've been harping on here for a long enough. How long are we on? 2 hours 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Listen, great to see you, and
Yeah,
congratulations on that wonderful child you had there.
Yeah, he's nice, isn't
looking
he?
forward to seeing him soon as well. But,
yeah, he's grown well.
And come here, thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for having me in my apartment here.
Yeah.
My humble abode.
Yeah.
And to everybody, I don't know, like we didn't mention the chat by the way, but
oh yeah, look, they can.
It's been on fire there. There's 140 people in it.
Yeah.
And Jenny, how are you doing, Jenny? Great girl from Cork. Mick O'Keefe, Chopper's there as well. We had a great stream.
Mick says don't let him drive home. Am I
hijacking our stream here?
Yeah, I don't know. Am I giving myself away? Have I had a few too many? But
I only had a sip. Bosco from Saints and Scholars, my great friend as well, is doing great work.
Great.
A really important guy, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
His views and his outlook and his education on things, guys. You need to keep an eye on Bosco and Saints and Scholars. Anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. So.
Listen, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Until next time. Anyway, I don't know. Look after yourselves, lads, and I'll just end it there. Chuck a girl off.
Good night.